कृष्णपादाचार्यललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणि विचारम् निर्विशेष शून्य पाश्चात्य देश तारे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरव कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे सर्वशास्त्रार्थी पीयूष सर्ववेदैक तत्फला सर्वसिद्धांत रत्नाढ्य सर्वलौकिक दृक्पदा सर्वभागवत प्राण श्रीमद्भागवत प्रभो कलिध्वांतो विदादित्य श्री कृष्ण परिवर्तिता परमानंद पाठाय प्रेमवर्षक्षराय ते सर्वदा सर्वसेव्य श्री कृष्णाय नमोस्तुमे देग बंधो मत्संगिन मद्गुरो मन्महाधना मन्निस्तारक मद्भाग्य मदानंद नमस्तुते साधु साधुतादाय नीचोच्चताकर आनमुच्चकदाचिन माम यमुनाहृत्कंठयोस्पुरा ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय 2.6.21 to 2.6.30 text 21 श्रुति विचक्रमे विश्वशासना न शने रूपे यद अविद्या च विद्या च पुरुषस्तु भय आश्रयः by his energies the all pervading personality of Godhead is thus comprehensively the master in the activities of controlling and in devotional service. He is the ultimate master of both nescience and factual knowledge of all situations. Ayam cha adhikara bheda ekasyaiva avastha bhedena न तो अत्यंत भिन्न विषय. इति दर्शयन् ततो विश्वं नित्यस्यार्थमाह. This is an explanation of another text of Purusha Sukta. It talks about two different pathways here. Shasana, Anashana. Two different pathways. Dakshina and Uttara. It refers to the Vedic pathway of enjoyment, the Vedic pathway of renunciation towards liberation. One of them involves avidya in the form of karma. And the other pathway involves vidya, which helps one attain liberation through meditation on the Supreme Lord. Sritite, Prapancha Lakshane Jivasi Gati. These are the two pathways of the movement of the jiva. But here, Vidya refers to Maya, Vidya refers to the spiritual potency. Purushotamastu tayoho dvayoho api ashraya. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the shelter of both of them. This will be clear from text 22. So the Jivatma he attains Ekapada Vibhuti or Tripada Vibhuti. Vidyaya Upareme Labdhaya Ekaya Bhakti Eva. When it says that the living entity attains the Tripad Vibhuti, tri-quadrantal manifestation of the Lord's opulence, that means the spiritual world, through Vidya. It should be understood that that is through Bhakti alone. We learned that from Bhagavad Gita 11.55. He is the master of both the potencies, avidya and vidya. The word Vishwang is significant in this verse. Vishwang, the all-pervading personality of God. One who travels perfectly in every field of activity is called the Purusha or Kshetrajya. These two terms, Kshetrajya and Purusha, are equally applicable to both the individual self and the Supreme Self, the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 13.3, the matter is explained as follows. Kshetrajyam chapipam vidhi, sarva kshetreshu bharata, kshetra kshetrajyayo jnanam, kshetrajnanam matam mama. Kshetra means the place, and one who knows the place is called the kshetrajya. The individual self knows about its limited field of activities, but the Supreme Self, the Lord, knows about the unlimited field of activities. In Paramatma Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami has analyzed the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita to point out that actually there is a distinction between the Ekakshetragya and the Sarvakshetragya. While analyzing this very verse, he says, Kshetragyam cha apimam vidhi. Sarvakshetreshu Bharata. The word Sarvakshetreshu comes here. If there is only ultimately, and in reality, there is only one Kshetragya, that is Brahman. And the Jivatma is only apparently different from Brahman. Then Krishna would have said only this much. You should know that I am that Kshetragya. Why is he saying Sarvakshetreshu? I am the Kshetragya in all the Kshetras. I am the know me to be the Kshetragya in all the Kshetras. That means he is the Sarva Kshetragya. Whereas in the previous verse of Bhagavad Gita 13.2, Krishna refers to the Jivatma as the Kshetragya of his particular Kshetra. The individual soul knows about his own thinking, feeling, and willing activities, but the Super Soul or the Paramatma, the Supreme Controller, being present everywhere, knows everyone's thinking, feeling, and willing activities, and as such, the individual living entity is the minute master of his personal affairs, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master of everyone's affairs, past, present, and future. Vedaham, Samatitani, etc. Only the ignorant person who does not know this difference, only the ignorant person does not know this difference between the Lord and the living entities. The living entities as distinguished from incognizant matter. Incognizant means unconscious. Maybe qualitatively equal to the Lord in cognizance, in knowledge. But the living entity can never be equal to the Lord in full knowledge of past, present, and future. So it's a fact that matter is not conscious. The Jivatma is conscious, like how the Paramatma is conscious. Therefore, matter is called Anatma. So you have Atma, Anatma, Paramatma, Viveka. You have the distinction between the Atma, the Paramatma, and the Anatma. Nevertheless, there is the question of the extent of knowledge. It's the fact that the Jivatma is conscious, Paramatma is conscious, matter is not conscious. Still, what is the extent of the consciousness of the Jivatma? What is the extent of the consciousness of Paramatma? That should be analyzed. The Jivatma's consciousness or awareness is limited, whereas the Paramatma's consciousness is unlimited. Even though there are statements that after liberation, the living entity becomes endless, unbounded, unlimited. Even that should be understood only in as a relative expression. Compared to his conditioned state, he is in a state of unbounded existence. He is nevertheless never equal to the Supreme Lord in every way. Certainly not, he does not become infinite in the literal sense. And because the living entity is only partially cognizant, he is sometimes forgetful of his own identity. This forgetfulness is specifically manifested in the field of the Ekapada Vibhuti of the Lord, or in the material world, but in the Tripad Vibhuti, field of actions, or in the spiritual world, there is no forgetfulness by the living entities who are free from all kinds of contaminations resulting from the forgetful state of existence. The material body is a symbol of the gross and subtle form of forgetfulness. Therefore, the whole atmosphere of the material world is called avidya or nescience, whereas the whole atmosphere of the spiritual world is called vidya or full knowledge. There are different stages of avidya. They are called dharmartha, kama, and moksha. The idea of moksha or liberation held by the monist in the matter of oneness of the living entity and the Lord by ultimate merging into one is also the last stage of materialism or forgetfulness. Knowledge of the qualitative oneness of the self and the superself, self and superself, is partial knowledge and ignorance also, because there is no knowledge of quantitative difference as explained above. So therefore, Kaivalya Moksha or the impersonalist understanding of liberation or impersonal liberation, that is also a part of avidya. The individual self can never be equal to the Lord in cognizance. Otherwise, he could not be placed in the state of forgetfulness. So, because the individual selves or living entities are prone to undergo a stage of forgetfulness, there's always a gulf of difference between the living entity and the Lord, as between the part and the whole. The part is never equal to the whole. So, the conception of 100% equality of the living being with the Lord is also nescience, ignorance. In the field of nescience, ignorance, activities are directed toward lording it over the creation. In the material world, therefore, everyone is engaged in acquiring material opulence to lord it over the material world. Therefore, there's always clash and frustration, which are symptoms of nescience. But in the field of knowledge, there is devotion service to the Lord, bhakti. Therefore, there is no chance of being contaminated by the influence of nescience or forgetfulness or vidya in the liberated stage of devotional activities. The Lord is thus the proprietor of the fields, both of nescience and of cognition. Nescience means ignorance, cognition means knowledge, and it remains a choice of the living entity to exist in either of the above regions. And this choice is a part and parcel of the living entity. Whether he's in the field of nescience or he's in the field of cognition, whether he's in the lowest point of nescience or in the highest point of cognition, under all circumstances, this choice remains. Text 22. Yasmadandam virajagye bhutendriya gunatmakaha taddravyam matyagad vishwam gobi surya ivan. From that personality of God are generated all the universal globes and the universal form with all material elements, qualities, and senses. Yet he is aloof from such material manifestations, just as the sun is separate from its rays and heat. Taddevam virat antarvartinam phalavaichitriya muktva. So far, it is pointed out that the results attained by those who are inside the universe are variegated. Tat karaneshwarasya tad vailakshanyam darshayitum. In order to point out the distinction between them and their cause, the Supreme Lord. Tasmad virada jayata ityasyarthamaha. The meaning of another text of the Purusha Sukta is explained here. The Virat or the universal form consists of the bhutas, the elements, indriyas, the senses and gunas, the modes. That person from whom the Brahmanda came upon and from whom this Virat came upon He is the Ishvara. Tad Vishwam Virat Deham Dravyam Andam Cha Atikrantavam. He surpasses his body, the universe, as well as the elements. The elements refer to the Brahmanda. Surya Iti Purvokte Vidashtanda. This is the example of the sun was already given before. त्रिपाद्विभूतेः अन्तरङ्गायाश्चिच्छक्तेः विलासः इति चिन्मय्यां तस्याम् आसक्ते एव पादविभूतिस्तु बहिरङ्गायां मायाशक्तेर्विलास इति मायामय्यां तस्याम् अनासक्ते एव परमेश्वरः तां केवलम् उपकरोति इति आह. The triquadrantal manifestation of opulence, the spiritual world, that is a sportive manifestation of Krishna's internal potency, which is a spiritual potency. So the Supreme Lord is attached to his spiritual potency. On the other hand, the Pada Vibhuti or uniquadrantal manifestation of opulence, that means material manifestation, that is a sportive manifestation of his external Maya potency. And the Supreme Lord is certainly unattached to this Maya potency, but he simply helps her in her functioning. That is pointed out in this verse. Bhutendriya Gunatmaka Purusha Ishvara. That Purusha, who is the soul of the elements, the senses, and the modes of material nature, is the Ishvara. Tadandam Dravyam. Whereas that Brahmanda, which is made out of those, that is the substance. Virat Shariram Cha Atyagat. So he is beyond that body of the universe, the universal form. That provision, Prakashayanapi, even though he has entered into it, even though he has illuminated it, Tatra Anasaktatva, Atikramya Agat, Gatvacha. Therefore, because he is detached from it, he is beyond it. So, Antaranga Sthane Tripadvibhuta Eva Sadastita iti bhava. So, he is always situated in his own internal potency, in internal status, internal place, in the Tripad Vibhuti. That is where he is constantly situated. He is not situated in material existence. That is the implication. Tatra Anurupo Drishtanta. There is an appropriate example here. Gobihi, Kiranaihi, Vishwam Atapan, Prakashayan, Surya Iva, Swamandale Stitaha. Just as Surya, the sun demigod, he is situated in his own abode, the Surya Mandala, even though he heats up the universe with his rays and he illuminates the universe. A fine explanation. The supreme truth has been ascertained in the previous verse as the Purusha or Purushottama, the supreme person. The absolute person is the Ishvara or the supreme controller by his different energies. The Ekapada Vibhuti manifestation of the material energy of the Lord is just like one of the many mistresses of the Lord, by whom the Lord is not so much attracted, as indicated in the language of the Gita, Bhinna Prakriti. But the region of the Tripad Vibhuti, being a pure spiritual manifestation of the energy of the Lord, is, so to speak, more attractive to him. The Lord therefore generates the material manifestations by impregnating the material energy. And then within the manifestation, he expands himself as the gigantic form of the Vishwarupa. The Vishwarupa, as it was shown to Arjuna, is not the original form of the Lord. The original form of the Lord is a transcendental form of Purushottama or Krishna himself. It is very nicely explained herein that he expands himself just like the sun. The sun expands itself by its terrible heat and rays, yet the sun is always aloof from such rays and heat. The impersonalist takes into consideration the rays of the sun without any information of the tangible, transcendental, eternal form of the Lord known as Krishna. Therefore, Krishna in his supreme personal form, with two hands and flute, is bewildering for the impersonalists, who can accommodate only the gigantic Vishwarupa of the Lord. They should know that just as the rays of the sun are secondary to the sun, the impersonal gigantic form of the Lord is also secondary to his personal form as Purushottama. The Brahma Samhita 5.37 confirms this statement as follows. Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhis Abhiryev Nijarupataya Kalabhi Goloka Eva Niva Satya Kilatma Puto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda, the one who enlivens the senses of everyone with bodily rays, resides in his transcendental abode called Goloka. Yet he is present in every nook and corner of his creation by expansion of his happy spiritual rays, equal in power to his personal potency of bliss. He is therefore simultaneously personal and impersonal by his inconceivable potency, or he is the one without a second, displaying complete unity in a diversity of material and spiritual manifestations. He is separate from everything and still nothing is different from him. It's 23. Yadasya nabhyan malina aham masam mahatmanah navidam yajna sambharan purusha vai avandrate. When I was born from the abdominal lotus flower of the Lord Mahavishnu, the great person, I had no ingredients for sacrificial performances except the bodily limbs of the great personality of Godhead. Nanu evam पुरुषे एव चेत् सर्वं तर्हि यज्ञस्य तत् साधनानां च अपृथक् भावात् यज्ञैः पुरुष आराधनं न सिद्ध्येत् इत्याशङ्क्य तत् परिहाराय यत् पुरुषेण हविषा इत्यादि मन्त्रार्थं संगृह्य दर्शयति यदेत्यादिना. Anticipated objection. If the Supreme Purusha, the Supreme Lord, he is indeed everything, then he would not be separate from the yajna and the means by which one executes yajna. And it is through yajna that one worships that Supreme Purusha. That would not be possible to execute if everything is actually him. So to eradicate this doubt, he then, in brief, explains the purport of another text of the Purusha Sukta. Asya iti virad antaryaminaha. Here, the great personality of Godhead is the super soul of this universe, the super soul of the universal form. Tasyeva prakritatvat, because he is the subject matter of this discussion. Now, ho nabhyam tasma yajnasya sambhara sadhanani na pashyam. I could not see the ingredients or the means by which I could execute yajna. Asya garbhodaka shayi rupasya sataha. So this refers to garbhodaka shayi Vishnu. The great personality of God is garbhodaka shayi Vishnu. Purusha avayavad rite iti tadanim pashwadi anutpattehe. How could he get the sacrificial animal and so on? These are all ingredients of sacrifice. There is no creation, did not even happen at that time. Brahma has not created any species, nothing. So you only had the different parts of the universal form, which is the extended form of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Tam vina vastutah vastuantar abhava tasya paricharanasya avashyakatvacha पार्थिवै गंध पुष्पादिभिः पृथिव्या आराधनमिव तदात्मकैरेव वस्तुभिः तद आराधनं सिद्ध्येत्. It is a fact that nothing exists without him, without the Supreme Lord. And it is absolutely essential that we engage in service to him. So this service or this worship of the Supreme Purusha should be executed using items which are actually his own products, which are coming from him, just as we worship Mother Earth using fragrances, flowers, and so on, which are products of the earth. Atra tad agya eva pramanam. And the evidence that this is bona fide is his very order, because the Supreme Lord's order never goes against the Vedas, and therefore it is never adharma. Iti pradarshayam. So Lord Brahma demonstrates this. Swam drishtantayati, and shows himself as an example here. Lord Brahma, the creator of the cosmic manifestation, is known as Swayambhu, or one who is born without father and mother. The general process is that a living creature is born out of the sex combination of the male father and the female mother. But Brahma, the first-born living being, is born out of the abdominal lotus flower of the Mahavishnu plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. The abdominal lotus flower is part of the Lord's bodily limbs, and Brahma is born out of the lotus flower. Therefore, Lord Brahma is also a part of the Lord's body. Brahma, after his appearance in the gigantic hollow of the universe, saw darkness and nothing else. He felt perplexity, and from his heart he was inspired by the Lord to undergo austerity, thereby acquiring the ingredients for sacrificial performances. But there was nothing besides the two of them, namely the personality of Mahavishnu and Brahma himself, born of the bodily part of the Lord. For sacrificial performances, many ingredients were in need, especially animals. The animal sacrifice is never meant for killing the animal, but for achieving the successful result of the sacrifice. The animal offered in the sacrificial fire is, so to speak, destroyed, but the next moment it is given a new life by dint of the Vedic hymns chanted by the expert priest. When such an expert priest is not available, the animal sacrifice in the fire of the sacrificial altar is forbidden. Thus, Brahma created even the sacrificial ingredients out of the bodily limbs of the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, which means that the cosmic order was created by Brahma himself. Also, nothing is created out of nothing, but everything is created from the person of the Lord. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Ham sarvasya prabhavo mattas sarvam pravartate. Everything is made from my bodily limbs, and I am therefore the original source of all creation. Imperialists argue that there is no use in worshipping the Lord when everything is nothing but the Lord himself. The personalist, however, worships the Lord out of a great sense of gratitude, utilizing the ingredients born out of the bodily limbs of the Lord. The fruits and flowers are available from the body of the earth, and yet Mother Earth is worshipped by the sensible devotee with ingredients born from the earth. Similarly, Mother Ganges is worshipped with the water of the Ganges, and yet the worshipper enjoys the result of such worship. Worship of the Lord is also performed with ingredients born from the bodily limbs of the Lord, and yet the worshipper who is himself a part of the Lord achieves the result of devotional service to the Lord. While the impersonalist wrongly concludes that he is the Lord himself, the personalist, out of great gratitude, worships the Lord in devotional service, knowing perfectly well that nothing is different from the Lord. The devotee therefore endeavors to apply everything in the service of the Lord, because he knows that everything is the property of the Lord and that no one can claim anything as one's own. This perfect conception of oneself, oneness, helps the worshipper in being engaged in his loving service, whereas the impersonalist, being falsely puffed up, remains a non-devotee forever without being recognized by the Lord. Text 24. Teshu yagyasya pashavaha sa vanaspatayah kusha idam chedeva yajanam kalaschoru gunanvitaha. For performing sacrificial ceremonies, one requires sacrificial ingredients such as flowers, leaves, and straw, along with sacrificial altar and a suitable time or spring. तदा तेषु संहारेषु साध्येषु सत्सु पुरुषावयवैरेते संहाराः संहृता इति चतुर्थेन अन्वयः वनस्पतयः यूपाः. This vanaspati, these flowers and leaves, they refer to the pillars, sacrificial pillars. Deva yajanam yajna bhumi. Deva yajanam refers to the sacrificial altar. Idam cheti vachanad yagyarhe sthane upavishtaha kathayati iti gamyate. And because he says all these, one requires all of these. So it is understood that when Lord Brahma is talking to Narada Muni, he is actually sitting on that spot on which he performed this sacrifice. Text 25. Vastunyaushadhaya sneha rasaloham mridojjalam racho yajunshi samani chaturhotram cha sattama. Other requirements are utensils, grains, clarified butter, honey, gold, earth, water, the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, and Samaveda, and 4 priests to perform the sacrifice. So you require a Hota, you require Udgata, you require a Brahma, you require a Ritvik. To perform a sacrifice successfully. Adhvari, sorry, you require Adhvari. At least 4 expert priests are needed. One who can offer Hota, Putri. One who can chant Udgata, Udgatri. One who can kindle the sacrificial fire without the aid of separate fire, Adhvariyu. And one who can supervise, Brahma. Such sacrifices were conducted from the birth of Brahma, the first living creature, and were carried on till the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira. But such expert Brahmana priests are very rare in this age of corruption and quarrel. And therefore, in the present age, only the yajna of chanting the holy name of the Lord is recommended. The scriptures enjoin Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam Kalu Nasteva 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 Gatiranyatha. 26. Namadheyani Mantrascha Dakshinascha Vratani cha Devatanu Kalpa Sankalpas Tantrameva cha. Other necessities include invoking the different names of the demigods by specific hymns and vows of recompense. That you fulfill these prayers of mine, and then I will carry out these vows in return, in accordance with the particular scripture for specific purposes and by specific processes. It is actually a kind of technology. The names refer to Jyotishtoma and so on. These are names of various sacrifices. The mantras here refer to Swaha and so on. And there is a purpose behind this sacrifice, which refers to invoking various demigods. Kalpaha refers to Baudhayana and other procedural scriptures. Sankalpa is the statement of one specific purpose. Now I will perform. One has to declare officially. Tantra refers to the process, Anushtana Prakara. The whole process of offering sacrifice is under the category of fruitive action, karma. And such activities are extremely scientific. They mainly depend on the process of vibrating sounds with a particular accent. It is a great science, but due to being out of proper use for more than 4,000 years, for want of qualified brahmanas, such performances of sacrifice are no longer effective, nor are they recommended in this fallen age. Any such sacrifice undertaken in this age as a matter of show is simply a cheating process by the clever priestly order. But such a show of sacrifices cannot be effective at any stage. Fruitive action is being carried out with the help of gross material science, but the materialists await a still more subtle advancement in the process of vibrating sounds on which the Vedic hymns are established. Gross material science cannot help one fulfill the real purpose of human life. It can only increase the artificial needs of life without any solution to the problems of life. Therefore, the way of materialistic life leads to the wrong type of human civilization. Since the ultimate aim of life is spiritual realization, the direct way of invoking the holy name of the Lord, as mentioned above, is precisely recommended by Lord Chaitanya. And the people of the modern age can easily take advantage of this simple process, which is tenable, which is applicable for the condition of the complicated social structure. Text 27. Gatayo matayaschaiva prayaschittam samarpanam purushavayavairete sambhara samhritam maya. Thus, I had to arrange all these necessary ingredients and paraphernalia of sacrifice from the personal bodily parts of the personality of Godhead. By invocation of the demigod's names, the ultimate goal Vishnu was gradually attained, and thus compensation and ultimate offering were complete. Yagyena yagyamaya janta deva. This is another text of the Purusha Sutta, which has been paraphrased now. Yagyam. Here the word yagya. Where is yagya? But he's just making a general remark. We should not check with it. Yagya itself refers to Vishnu. So it is understood that Yagyena Yagyam Ayajanta in Purusha Sutta, which has been clarified here, it indicates that through the process of fire sacrifice, one worships Lord Vishnu. I thought that's some question here. What is the result we expect in Kali Yuga by performing fire sacrifice? I think everywhere they expect particular results. Every fire sacrifice is meant for a particular purpose. It's a very detailed science. But in today's world, people hardly understand. They don't even go through the books, the Kalpa Sutras. There's so much. It is a gigantic area, a very gigantic field of knowledge. And I don't think even born Brahmins are nowadays interested in this. I think that there may be some academic scholars in India or outside India. And there are a few people who sit and study all this. Karma Kanda. There are some Karma Kanda Vidvans, learned scholars of the Karma Kanda system. We see only Brahman performs fire sacrifice in ISKCON. One Brahman. But our fire sacrifice is just a tiny little. It is not the original Treta Yuga type fire sacrifice. Those fire sacrifices take a lot of time, like that Dasharatha performed Putra Kameshti. And before that, I think he performed Ashwamedha. It took 1 year. It takes 1 year to do Ashwamedha Yagya. It takes 1 year to do Ashwamedha Yagya. Lots of, you need to be very rich. You need to be very, very, first of all, a king possesses the kingdom. Nevertheless, it needs to be extremely rich to perform Ashwamedha. Ashwamedha, Rajasuya, these are all grand bash celebrations. Everybody will be benefited. The entire kingdom will be benefited. They will attain lot of punya. They will attain lot of material benefit also. But it's very expensive. It's all very, very expensive. You need to get the right type of brahmanas. There are also Brahma Rakshasas waiting to mess it up because they themselves became Brahma Rakshasas because they committed a mistake. If you commit a mistake, then you will be born as a Brahma Rakshasa. So they are filled with jealousy. They look at all these people, they are also happy with their bodies, they can enjoy sense objects. We cannot enjoy sense objects. So they're all waiting. You commit one mistake, immediately they'll capture. So the Brahmins are also very frightened to engage in that. So in that kind of proper sacrifice, you all of that.
So, what about our yajnas? Our yajnas also devotees sometimes perform and commit offenses. Then they also get the same results.
I do not know whether they will become Brahma Rakshasas because we execute these sacrifices only as a part of the Archana process. So it is a little different. It's a little different. It's not, we don't execute them as part of Karma Kanda. If you want to execute Putra Kameshti Yagya and all that, and you commit blunders, then yeah, then yeah, anything can happen. But our sacrifices, the sacrifices which Prabhupada introduced, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur introduced, these ones are all exclusively for the purpose of uh, helping the Sankirtan mission, exclusively to satisfy Krishna, not for Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. They're very different nature. But if we execute fire sacrifices for some other purpose, for Dharma, Artha, Kama, just like in Karma Kanda, then I do not know what is going to happen. If it is a Vaishnava sacrifice, accepting Vishnu's supremacy right from the outset, uh, then I think that to some degree things will be relaxed. But in general, we should not play with these things. In this verse, special stress is given to the person of the Supreme Lord and not to his impersonal Brahmajyoti as being the source of all supplies. Narayana, the Supreme Lord, is the goal of sacrificial results. And therefore, the Vedic hymns are ultimately meant for attaining this goal. Human life is thus made successful by pleasing Narayana, getting entrance into the direct association of Narayana in the spiritual kingdom of Vaikuntha. Text 28. Oh, this is where it is. Iti samhrita samhara purushavayavarham tammeva purusham yagyam tenaiva yajyam ishwaram. Thus I created the ingredients and paraphernalia for offering sacrifice out of the parts of the body of the Supreme Lord, the enjoyer of the sacrifice, and I perform the sacrifice to satisfy the Lord. All the sacrifices need to be also offered to the Supreme Lord in a very official manner. There are proper statements which one has to declare. The entire fire sacrifice is a public declaration of subservience to the Supreme Lord. People in general are always anxious to have peace of mind or peace in the world. So here is Yajna. This is what Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur was referring to. Yajna, it's a name of Lord Vishnu. In this way, I perform the sacrifice to satisfy the Lord, meaning satisfy Lord Yajna or Lord Vishnu. People in general are always anxious to have peace of mind or peace in the world, but they do not know how to achieve such a standard of peace in the world. Such peace in the world is obtainable by performances of sacrifice and by performance of austerity. In the Bhagavad Gita 5.29, the following prescription is recommended. Bhoktaram yajyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram sukhridam sarvabhutanam yatva mam shantim richati. The Karma Yogis know that the Supreme Lord is the factual enjoyer and maintainer of all sacrifices and of the austere life. They also know that the Lord is the ultimate proprietor of all the planets and is the factual friend of all living entities. Such knowledge gradually converts the Karma Yogis into pure devotees of the Lord through the association of unalloyed devotees. And thus they are able to be liberated from material bondage. Brahma, the original living being within the material world, taught us the way of sacrifice. The word sacrifice suggests dedication of one's own interest for the satisfaction of a second person or someone else. That is the way of all activities. Every man is engaged in sacrificing his interest for others, either in the form of family, society, community, country, or the entire human society. But perfection of such sacrifices is attained when they are performed for the sake of the Supreme Person, the Lord. Because the Lord is the proprietor of everything, because the Lord is a friend of all living creatures, and because He is the maintainer of the performer of sacrifice, as well as the supplier of the ingredients of sacrifices. It is He only, and no one else, who should be satisfied by all sacrifices. The whole world is engaged in sacrificing energy for advancement of learning, social upliftment, economic development, and plans for total improvement of the human condition. No one is interested in sacrificing for the sake of the Lord, as it is advised in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, there is no peace in the world. If men at all want peace in the world, they must practice sacrifice in the interest of the Supreme Proprietor and friend of all. Text 29. Tataste bhratara ime prajanam patayo nava ayajan vyaktam avyaktam purusham susamahitah. My dear son, thereafter your 9 brothers, who are masters of living creatures, that means they are Prajapati, Prajanam Patayaha, performed the sacrifice with proper rituals to satisfy both the manifested and non-manifested personalities. Tena deva ayajanta iti asyartham sa prapancham darshayati tata iti dvabhyam. Then in 2 verses, text 29 and 30, he presents the meaning of another hymn of another text of the Purusha Sukta. Vyaktam Indradi Rupena, Avyaktam Swataha. The non-manifested personality is Lord Vishnu himself. The manifested personalities are Indra and the other devas through whom he provides the material necessities. Anena Purusham Jatam Agrataha iti asya artho darshitaha. So this is an explanation of another portion of Purusha Sutta. The manifested personalities are the demigods like the ruler of the heavenly kingdom, Indra, and his associates, and the non-manifested personality is the Lord himself. The manifested personalities are mundane controllers of the material affairs, whereas the non-manifested personality of Godhead is transcendental beyond the range of the material atmosphere. In this age of Kali, the manifested demigods are also not to be seen, for space travel has completely stopped from their side. So both the powerful demigods and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are non-manifested to the covered eyes of the modern man. The covered eyes of the modern man. Modern men want to see everything with their eyes, although they are not sufficiently qualified. Consequently, they disbelieve in the existence of the demigods or of the Supreme God. They should see through the pages of authentic scriptures and should not simply believe their unqualified eyes. Even in these days, God can also be seen by qualified eyes, tinged with the ointment of love of God. Text 13. Tatascha manavah kale ईजिरो ऋषयो परे पितरो विबुधा दैत्या मनुष्या कृतभिर्विभुम्. Thereafter, the Manus, the fathers of mankind, the great sages, the forefathers, the learned scholars, Daityas, and mankind performed sacrifices meant to please the Supreme Lord. So all at the right time they performed. The Daityas are devotees of the demigods because they want to derive the greatest possible material facilities from them. The devotees of the Lord are econished or absolutely attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, they have practically no time to seek the benefits of material facilities. Because of their realization of their spiritual identity, they are more concerned with spiritual emancipation than with material comforts. Okay. There's still something. Are there any brahmanas still available who can light fire without help of fire? Um, Maybe some rare persons, maybe. But previously, that was a standard a long time back, several yugas back. Now it's gone. Hmm?
The previous verse, Prabhupada is explaining the purport. Even in these days, God can also be seen by qualified eyes. Last,
Yes,
how Prabhupada
yes.
is writing this as somebody has seen in these days.
But with that, provided Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, you engage in Bhakti Yoga, you develop love of God, and you can see God. This is
So,
not some high tech.
actually, this what is this Premanjana? I can't get. Always I get confusion.
When one develops, okay, wait. यथा यथात्मा परिमृज्यते सहो मत पुण्य गाथा श्रवणाभिधानये तथा तथा पश्यति वस्तु सूक्ष्म चक्षुर यथैवांजन संप्रयुक्त. When a diseased eye is treated with medicinal ointment, it gradually recovers its power to see. Similarly, a conscious living entity cleanses himself of material contamination by hearing and chanting the pious narrations of my glories. He regains his ability to see me, the absolute truth, in my subtle spiritual form. This is Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochana. When you reach the point of pure love of God, then your original spiritual eye becomes activated. And then with that spiritual eye, you're able to see spiritual reality, Krishna, his abode, and so on. So this is that. That is also explained in another place. We can go to the original itself. But it's not showing. Okay. This is the actual text. Prema Anjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. With the eye of devotion tinged with the salve. Salve means medicine of love. Worshipped Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyamsundara, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts, with the eye of devotion, tinged with the salve of love. Shyamsundara form of Krishna. This is inconceivable, simultaneous, personal and impersonal, self-contradictory form. True devotees see that form in their purified hearts under the influence of devotional trance. The form Shyama is not the blue color visible in the mundane world, but is the transcendental variegated color affording eternal bliss, and it's not visible to the mortal eye. On a consideration of the trance of Vyasadeva as in the shloka Bhakti Yogena Manasi, etc., it will be clear that the form of Sri Krishna is the full personality of Godhead and can only be visible in the heart of a true devotee, which is the only true seat in the seat of trance under the influence of devotion. When Krishna manifested himself in Vraja, both the devotees and non-devotees saw him with this very eye, but only the devotees cherished him, eternally present in Vraja as the priceless jewel of their heart. Nowadays also the devotees see him in Vraja in their hearts, saturated with devotion, although they do not see him with their eyes. The eye of devotion is nothing but the eye of the pure, unalloyed spiritual self of the Jiva. The form of Krishna is visible to that eye, devotion to its purification by the practice of devotion. When the devotion of the neophyte reaches the stage of bhava bhakti, the pure eye of that devotee is tinged with the salve of love by the grace of Krishna, which enables him to see Krishna face to face. The phrase in their hearts means Krishna is visible in proportion as their hearts are purified by the practice of devotion. The sum and substance of the shloka is that the form of Krishna, who is known as Shyamsundar, Natavar, best dancer, Muralidhar, holder of the flute, and Tribhanga, triple bending, is not a mental concoction but is transcendental and is visible to the eye of the soul of the devotee under trance. Also, uh, that verse number 58. Swami, if he says anything. यद्यपि गोलोके एव निवसति तथापि प्रेमाञ्जनीति. Even though the Lord resides in Goloka, still through the eye which is tinged with the salve of love, he can be seen. Achintya guna swarupam api premakhyam yad anjanam tena shurita vaddukchaihi prakashamanam bhaktirupam vilochanam tena. So even though Lord Krishna's form is filled with inconceivable qualities, still with the medicine known as love of God, if one's eyes are filled with that, then the Lord can be very vividly seen. That vision, that eye, is what is referred to as bhakti. Okay, we'll stop with this. Okay. On Shagalaputra Vaishya Kripasya, Paridanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.